special meeting on the budget. Welcome everyone to the special meeting of council. This meeting is called for the specific purpose to consider the 2019 to 2021 budget for the city of Brampton. Under council's meeting rules, no other business can be considered at this special meeting. All members of council will be present, and they are now. We have a motion moved by Councillor Paleshi, seconded by Councillor Bowman to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Motion carries. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act or any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Conflict. So do the conflicts stated in the previous budget meeting need to be declared again today? Okay, so Councillor Fertini and then Councillor Williams. Councillor Fertini?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just declaring a conflict as my daughter works off time for bylaws.
Okay. And Councillor Williams?
Yes, the conflict on the compensation portion of the Public Works, as my brother and nephew both are employed by the Public Works Department.
Okay, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Before we as a council consider the 2019-2021 budget, there is another opportunity to hear from the public on this matter, and having public feedback has been very important for this council. We've had teletown halls, we've had coffee chat meetings across the city, we've had a real level of engagement. It's your city and we want to make sure that your voice is heard, and I believe through this process there has been an opportunity for everyone to share their perspectives. So we will proceed to public delegations before council's turn for questions and consideration of the budget. Please note the public notice regarding the city's budget approval process leading towards the special council meeting was advertised on the city's website and social media, as well as published in the Brampton Guardian on March 14th, 2019. If persons here tonight wish to speak to council about the budget, I ask you to please come forward, since this is the designated time at this meeting to hear your comments about the budget. For all public delegations this evening, you will each be given 5 minutes to speak. This is to ensure everyone who wants to speak will get a chance to address council. Members may have questions of clarification for you after the delegation. When you do come forward, please state your name for the public meeting record. And there's no delegations that have requested to speak, but if anyone from the audience would like to come forward to ask a question, provide, and we certainly welcome any input. Well, and I would note if there are, yes, no. Please come down here, and I would note, I should mention, there might have been some confusion about the seniors transit fare. If for those here tonight that were here for the seniors transit discussion, that was dealt with this morning. Council voted to expedite the goal of having free transit for seniors in our community, and that decision was voted on and approved by council earlier today.
Okay. Respected Mayor, councillors, and all other dignitaries, we are very glad because you are from the people, you come to us for your votes and you are elected here, and we tell you our problems, what we face from the last. Our Association of Senior Clubs is a combination of more than 30 clubs in Brampton. And we have the concerns of seniors at the various levels, the city level, provincial level, federal level. We raise the issues. And we raise the issue of the bus pass, and respected mayor, other councillors, they are agreed on that proposal, and we are very happy. They did a great job because they want to finish it up to 2022. It will come to the zero. It is a big deal, but I again request that it must be done, because we watch here in the society that some governments, at some levels, they took a decision like this, which are implemented in the future, but they don't implement. Therefore, please ensure it, make it sure, so that this decision should be implemented within the time. Thank you very much.
I would note, and Al can correct me, but should this make, will Brampton be the first large city? I know Hamilton did free seniors transit over the age of, Alex, over the age of 75, but will Brampton be the first big Canadian city to offer free transit for seniors?
To you, Your Worship, Brampton will definitely be the one that is making free senior fares all day, every day. There are some jurisdictions that have free seniors for only very limited hours on certain days, but we are the only ones that will be doing that I know of today.
Well, it's a day to be proud of the city of Brampton, that we see that type of respect for our seniors, that we could be the first major city to embark upon it.
Yeah.
And so, great news for seniors, and thank you for sharing.
Very
your
good, very
perspective.
good. Great news for seniors, and we will cooperate you every time. Yeah.
Thank you. We have some questions, comments? Okay. Councillor Dillon first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to thank you for coming today. You know, as much thanks as you want to give council, I think all credit goes to our seniors community who lobbied, who petitioned, who let their councillors know, who let the mayor know as well during the past election and the last few years as well. And so I think it was the Association of Seniors and a lot of other seniors groups and individual seniors who let us know what's important to them. And I think that was, that's you know, worthy of some congratulations and some thanks as well. So I want to thank you, but I also want to just thank our wonderful staff as well, who did a great job in working with council to get this done. And so the main goal was to make sure that the seniors who have done so much for us and laid the foundation for our city, that we're giving a little bit back to them, and I think it's going to benefit everybody. So thank you so much, Mr. Bring, to the association and to all the seniors across the city.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Briggs, thank you for coming. I know take out a lot of your time, and you put a lot of effort into the senior community. And during the elections, we heard you know, that about the bus fares, and excuse me, and you know, thanks to you, so we heard your problems, and I know there was 2 or 3 items you really asked, but this was the #1 thing you made a promise. So hoping by the end of the term, our great staff here will have it free for use.
Yes, very good. Mr. Pat Fortini, Harkeet Singh, Gurpreet Singh, we are working together. From all the issues we are working together, and which problems we face, we tell them and we find solution from them. Because suppose I have some other solution in my mind, and when I convey my message to you, and you know the better way how to solve this issue. Because we have some other issues, just like I want one example of the government. We want only yearly bus pass. Just like in the BC, in the Edmonton, in the Calgary, our demand from the 2013, our demand was for a yearly pass. But now they gave us a better solution for a monthly pass, and it will go free in the few years, and it is better, and we welcome it. If you have other suggestion, you should comparison it with the other, which is better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, and that's, if you had my points about the collaboration between the community, elected officials and staff, so thank you for taking this step. Thank you for your advocacy as well. I know there's a wide variety of issues, and that's how we learn what's affecting the seniors population, and thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else who'd like to come forward to ask a question? Seeing none, thank you for everyone for coming forward this evening. We appreciate your advice, input, and comments. I'd also like to thank the media for participating in our budget deliberations. I noticed that we had Brampton Focus attend some of our coffee chats covering the budget deliberations, the pointers at articles on it, the Brampton Guardian, and it's the local media helped us get our message out. We wanted public input, and we're grateful for that. I have a motion by Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Paleshi. That we're receiving the delegations. Okay, all those in favor? Motion approved. Okay. Members of council, the 2019-2021 budget is before us. Do members have any specific questions for staff about the budget or wish to speak to the budget? Seeing none, we are now ready to vote. No? Councillor Paleshi? Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members have before you the 7 items that I requested at the last budget deliberations. One of those items, number 2, Excella implementation, I'd like to defer back to staff to have a more fulsome discussion around the implementation, the needs, the dollar figure attached. To kind of have just a more fulsome discussion on that.
So is this a question to planning?
I'm not asking for a question, I put deferral on the floor.
What item, sorry?
Number 2 of this, of the extra information we got, the 7 items of software upgrades that are happening before
So
coming.
this is the Excella implementation, the $1 million ongoing project.
Yes.
So there's a motion for deferral.
Yeah.
A deferral from this year's budget.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we need clarification. First, is the councillor speaking to deferral in terms of postponing it to a future date for consideration, or to refer it to staff or somewhere else? What is the intent?
So the intent is for staff to come back with some kind of rationale as to the use and the history of the program, the implementation, and the need in the city of Brampton.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think then your intent is to refer this capital project back to staff for further review and a report back. But I'll defer to the CAO and finance. I don't know the particulars of that particular project and how it is embedded in the capital projects.
Through the chair, I'll start, and happy if you want to join in as well. This project, as noted in the communication, this is to replace a system that was over 10 years old. It was at end of life, and this is, as the note identifies, there's a number of efficiencies and requirements that this was put out to RFP in 2018. It was awarded as Phase 1 in 2018 is currently being implemented. There are some additional costs required for different phases, starting with Phase 2 in 2019 for its further rollout, and those costs are embedded within the 2019 budget. So those dollars are required to support the implementation, continued implementation of that project moving forward to its full success. Rick, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Through you, Chair, nothing else that I think needs to be added. I am happy to have a more fulsome discussion about the application itself and how we intend to use it, how we intend to provide efficiencies to the service. But certainly I think our CAO has mentioned the appropriate items for discussion today.
So I'm fine to leave the dollar amount attached to something, but I think that that discussion needs to be had prior to any triggering of the implementation of this.
To the clerk, how would that be wordsmithed?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that a motion could be to approve the dollars as part of the 2019 current capital budget,
Upon approval from council for the implementation.
and that there be a further motion just introduced to have staff report back on implementation steps, so there can be a conversation on that. I'm trying to understand how the money would be approved, but is the intent that staff would not act to spend that money until that report comes back? Is that the intent?
Yes.
I don't know how that would impact the project, so I would defer to staff on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarification, we did issue an RFP, a full RFP for this software in 2018 in September. It closed in October 17th, and we had 10 bidders for replacement of this software. It was shortlisted, and eventually the software that's proposed here was chosen. So implementation has begun, and there is a scheduled launch date of August of 2019 for the full implementation of the software. As Joe had mentioned, there are aspects to it that are additional phases to supplement the base operating system. And so and that is what's tied, I think, to the 2019 budget ask, which we can come back, as you've requested, to identify what those costs are and how they'll be supplementing the software that we've already purchased. And we will have to do that fairly expeditiously if we want to maintain the target launch of August, so that we can make a smooth transition into the new software.
So, Councillor Fletcher,
Refer to council?
yeah, that we'll get a staff report before any of the $1 million will be spent, and hopefully that will be as quickly as possible to get that staff report. Okay, all those in favor of the deferral? Oh, two more speakers, sorry. Councillor Fertini.
Thank you. So just to understand, this software is to help planning? So I'm understand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, Councillor. It is a software to replace the current operating system that the planning department uses for processing of our planning applications.
Well, so holding this, Mr. Clerk, it's still going to continue, or we're going to put a hold on this? Because our planning was already slow in the past. We're trying to boost it up. Is it going to affect the planning department now? We're already having a lot of complaints on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would have the potential to affect the launch date, depending on the outcome of the more fulsome discussion.
You know, our planning department, well, it's over here, and we all sit around here, we're behind on development charges. It takes forever to get permits done, and we've been hearing that loud and clear by everyone. So we come up with this great software, and now we're putting a hold on it. So it's going to delay things more. So I can't support it. That's what I'm asking.
One speaker.
So my understanding is going to slow down the planning department. If it slows down the planning department, I want to continue with this. The whole idea is we've got together to try to get our planning department up and moving so we can get the permits out and not take too long. So I won't support that if it's going to slow down the planning department.
Okay, we have Councillor Santos. Oh, there.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So it went through the RFP process the first time. We're in the middle of implementation. We're trying our best to make things go faster and more streamlined in the planning department. And this deferral may now delay things. You know, I'm going to trust the expertise of the staff, considering it went through an RFP process, and I don't support the deferral.
Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rick, just to confirm, is it going to slow down the process if you guys come back at the next council meeting with any type of discussion related to what we're doing here today?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would be speculating. I'm not too sure what the intent is of the information that you want. So if ultimately the costs associated with the additional supplemental software that we need to make this happen. If ultimately your intention is to move forward with this solution or the solutions that we have already costed out, and you're just looking for additional information, then I would say that the chances of a delay in the implementation are small. If the discussion expands beyond to the point where we're potentially going back out to RFP, then there certainly could be implications to the launch date. So it really depends on the intended outcome, I guess, of the information you're requesting.
Okay, so Rick, what was the tendered, the total tendered amount for the system?
Through you,
Just
Mr.
tell us
Mayor,
if you don't have it.
I think the information that I have in front of me shows $1 million for the project. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if that includes the 2019 and 2018 ask in total.
If I may, Chair, through the chair, the original phase was in and around that $1 million mark, but the entire cost over a 5-year period was an approximation of $2.8 million.
$2.8 million was attached to the tender in our documents online. Joe, was there council approval for this tender?
Through the chair, the initial amount that was allocated to the project was under $1 million. Hence, a request to begin procurement report was not required. However, going through the RFP process, there was enough funding in the 2018 allocated budget for phase 1. The additional funds for this being requested for 2019 were for following years for that 5-year span.
But the tender went out at $2.8 million?
No, it did not.
But the dollar figure attached to the tender online is for $2.8 million.
Through the chair, there was no dollar amount attached to the RFP that went out.
But it came back as $2.8 million.
That is, yes.
So we thought it was going to be cheaper, so you didn't need council approval for that. But when it came back to $2.8 million, we still don't need council approval for that?
Through the chair, this was at a time where the CAO had the delegated authority at the previous council during the election period, and the CAO at the time had approved that.
Because we were in a lame duck period.
Through the chair.
And I realized the former CAO made that decision. I'm just here today asking council to say, maybe it wasn't the right decision without council having the full background on the system that it's replacing and the go-ahead with this. That's all I'm asking, is for additional information to come hopefully next council meeting or committee meeting so that we can get an overview of that. Does that change any opinions? It doesn't change any opinions. Okay.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Paleshi. I was, before you had wrapped up your last comment, I was just trying to understand why you were asking for the report back. And I do respect the limbo we're in when we're in a lame duck situation, and the CAO at the time was able to make those decisions. And so are you saying during the last term of council you had no in consultation about this plan? That's right. So there is no is there a background report supporting his decision to make this decision?
To council?
Yeah. How, sorry, through you, Mayor, to staff, how significantly would this delay this process if we were to have a deferral for, I don't know how much time you're looking for, Councillor Qureshi, but how significantly would it delay it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, as I mentioned before, it really depends on the outcome of the discussion. I mean, if we come forward with an information report to describe, the functionality of the old system and the intended function of the new system, the RFP process, and the additional information is accepted at that point, then there would be no delay. If the decision is made through that discussion that perhaps we need to revisit the drawing board and see if this is the right solution, then we're putting a full stop on the implementation of the program to go back out, take a second sober look, I guess, at what it is that we've asked for.
If I may add to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, as Chair, the price for the software, which was what we went out to RFP for, was $1.2 million. The additional cost, which got us to 2.8 in total, including the software, included the staff costs as well as the vendor implementation costs, and that is spread over the 5 years. So the understanding the former CAO had was we're talking $200,000 over that threshold of $1 million, hence his comfort level to say it was reasonable from that perspective, as well as then for those implementation costs to be phased in over the 5 years.
So I guess through you, Mayor, I could support more information coming back to council on why this decision was made, especially because it wasn't consulted with council during the lame duck period. So I would support more investigation. Thank you.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, to staff, so an RFP was already given out. How many people applied on the RFP or companies?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we had 10 bidders on the RFP.
And that was going back last term of council when he had full authority. So why are we stopping this RFP and going back to start zero? If that's the case, let's go back 10 years ago on how this ended up happening 10 years ago back. You know?
That's a good idea.
So, because I don't see why we have to stop an RFP, when it was already given out last year, now we stopped, and we're gonna go, well, what's gonna happen with this company? We're gonna get a lawsuit, we're gonna stop process, I don't know. Where's our legal here? Like,
Through the chair, that is a risk that could be taken depending on the direction council takes following additional information, as well as the risks of not having a system in place at all that functions to expedite and having 20 departments.
we go out with an RFP, so everything's functioning fine, and now it comes, and then a year later, we're gonna say, well, or 8 months later, we're not gonna approve it. It's already in the system, we're already working. We've been complaining about the planning department slow, and now we're gonna stop it. I don't see how we could stop it. I don't wanna take risks on lawsuits. I know what happened here years ago for the same process, and it stopped, and then the committee was formed. I know how the system worked, and I don't wanna go through that again. So I'm not gonna support this. If it wasn't done by us, it was done by the last council on the lame duck. He had full authority. There was 10 companies, one guy. It wasn't a difference between 1 million and 50 million. It's a difference of $200,000. We're already using the software. And now we're just gonna stop in all the planning department? I won't support it.
Okay, we have 2 more speakers, but I just want to say there's been some valid points here when Councillor Fortini is frustrated about the pace of responses at planning. I hear that all the time. But I think Councillor Paleski has pointed out something very valid here. And I hope this is a learning experience. I know we had a different CEO at the time in the fall, and we had a different planning commissioner. But obviously we can't have, it diminishes the role of council when you don't have council approval for a tender that size. And so I think unfortunately we're already into it, right? And so because our RFP's already been issued, it puts the city in a difficult position. But I commend Councillor Paleski for pointing out that this happened, and it shouldn't have. And so I hope this is not something that's, as much as we may not be able to fix this instance, I just want to stress this is not something that council would want to see happen again. And Councillor Dillon and Councillor Vicente are the next on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor. I want to call the question.
Okay, so the question's been called. Anyone who hasn't spoken has the right to speak. Oh, a vote to call the question. Motion carries? By Councillor Vicente hasn't spoken and Councillor Bowman hasn't spoken, so they'll be granted the opportunity. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question to the clerk. Mr. Clerk, when this council, after this council was sworn in, were we not presented with a list and a description of all of the CAO's lame duck decisions and given an opportunity to sign off on those once we took over after December 3rd?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a report, both a public report and a closed session report, if I recall. It wasn't necessarily for council to sign off because those decisions were made properly in accordance with the lame duck provisions and the delegated authority that existed last term. But it was for council's information, and it was a condition of the delegated authority to the CAO at the time that anything that he executed in terms of contracts or decisions were to be reported to council in the first term, and that did occur.
So the previous council, in its wisdom, because they understand that decisions need to be made during the lame duck period, delegated authority to the CAO. The CAO made decisions, and we had the opportunity to review those decisions when the list of his decisions were presented to members of council. And I believe it was on the list, and I do recall a description of a purchase for software for planning department, and the clerk can confirm. But there would be potentially a cost to now reversing the decision that was signed off by the previous CAO. And if delegated authority is given and then decisions are made, and there was a presentation to this council to review those decisions, I think today, at the time of this budget, is not the time to second guess a decision that was for the first time approved by the previous CAO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just trying to understand what we're doing here. We're not holding up the budget in any way here with this request, correct? The budget can still be passed with or without this information.
My understanding is you're approving the dollars to be held. However, they're not committed to the implementation for the software that is currently being configured for implementation and launch April 1st.
Okay. But the placeholder is still in the budget for that dollar figure.
Through the chair, I see it as the dollars are there in the event a decision is made to continue.
Correct. Okay. Rick, with the software, what are we using now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the software that we use today is currently, it's called Plan Track, and is created by a company that is called MTI, Mutarom Technologies.
Okay, and the system that we're using was implemented 10 years ago.
That's correct.
Has the system changed or been upgraded or been shaped to suit more purpose that Brampton might have in the past 10 years, or has it remained absolutely stagnant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it has been updated and amended as the city has brought forward requests. This type of a software is sort of a design-build solution. So the city typically comes forward with requests for upgrades or alterations to the software, and then we work with the vendor on a pricing for that work. We come to council for approval for that cost, and then we go back to the drawing board with MTI to hammer out a solution. And so it's it's reactive upgrades that come with the software based on what the city requests are.
Okay, so in the meantime, between now and 2 weeks from now, when you bring back a report, we're still going to be using Plan Track.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
And how much longer will we be using Plan Track until this system is fully implemented?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the contract that we currently have with MTI does expire in the summer of this year.
In the summer of this year.
That's right.
So this new system has to be implemented by June?
Through the chair, the timeline is August 1st.
Oh, August 1st, okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Willens hasn't spoke yet.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm okay with seeing further reports. I don't think I'm okay with reversing a decision that was made. But is there any provision in the contract that if we did cancel the contract, or it's etched in stone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have provisions typically in any contract, I think, that we enter into with these software providers that have a cancellation policy. So, but in this case, I think the contract is actually expiring.
Okay. Everyone else has spoken? Motion's on the screen. Okay, so this is for the next council meeting. All those in favor of the motion? No? To get a staff report for the next council meeting.
More information, as long as it's we're not, just clarification, as long as we're not stopping the process.
No.
You want more info?
No.
More information.
What is the intended, what additional information is being requested by council to help staff prepare for 2 weeks from now?
My understanding of Councillor Plessy's request is to help us understand why it's costing more and why it's gone beyond what was the normal protocol for a tender and a lame duck period.
That's, okay, that's understandable. What I'm not clear on is how why then we need to hold that money in abeyance with that information. If it's purely an information report, I'm happy to provide that. I'm not sure why the connection is being made to hold the dollar figure. Happy to provide that information as requested. Happy to develop a lessons learned type document recognizing what you said, Mr. Mayor, in terms of there are lessons learned to be had here from that unique circumstance, and arm council with that information so it doesn't happen again. I just want to be absolutely clear. We understand as staff what we're trying to prepare for council.
Maybe I ask Councillor Plessy, and I'm not sure this is too late. Yeah, you can't split the motion. So the question is, can we split the motion in terms of the dollar amount and the information report? Okay. Okay. Then I'm requesting to split it because I think there's different support. So the first vote is on, just to clarify, is on an information report, and the second part is on holding the funds. That way, if someone wants to have an information report but doesn't want to hold the funds, they have the option. Okay. Recorded vote?
A recorded vote's been requested on the first clause to refer the information back for further information on implementation steps. All in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Willens, Councillor Pleshy, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Williams. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing as opposed is Councillor Santos, Councillor Vasante, Councillor Maderos, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that motion loses 5-6. A recorded vote's been requested on the second part, as shown on the screen. All in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Paleshi, Mayor Brown. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing as opposed is Councillor Santos, Councillor Visante, Councillor Willens, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Maderos, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. Mr. Chair, that motion loses 2-9.
Okay. Now we are back on schedule. Members of council, the 2019-2021 budget is before us. We are now ready to vote on the 2019 to 2021 budget. Okay, Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, have we worked out to find where the money is coming from for the council office protocol?
Through the chair, Councillor, are you referring to the political staffing model conversion?
Yeah, $1.3 million total, is that what it is?
So I will hazard, my understanding is that dollar figure is being covered off through operational efficiencies in the budget.
Is there any more operational efficiencies you can find, put towards the budget?
Through the chair, staff worked really hard to provide a very robust budget to come in at the original amount of 0.8%. We're working really hard to find further efficiencies to reduce the 2020 and 21 draft budgets so that we can have that continued respect for the taxpayer and direction from this council. So for 2019, I don't believe there's any further efficiencies, but we will try and look for them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to separate the council office budget protocol with the budget that were before us here today.
Does that require a motion?
All I was asking for is information.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, Councillor Dillon.
I believe the final payment for Brampton Beast, is it in this budget? It's a question.
Through the chair, yes, it was in this budget.
I'd like to do a separate vote on Brampton Beast. I can't hear you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I need some clarity on what is the motion that's being introduced and who is the seconder?
There's is there a portion that's the final payment that goes towards Brampton Beast?
Through the chair, so there is a budgeted item for the Brampton Beast, but that payment was paid in the early part of this year already. So
Is it part of this budget?
of 2019, that is correct. So the budget, it's part of the 2019 budget, but the payment was already made at the beginning of this year.
I know Councilor Paleshi supported it, but I'll leave it though.
Can be sued or anything now? There's no motion on the floor, he's withdrawn? So that we don't get sued. Thank you, Councilor Dunn.
from its March 19th, 2025 meeting?
There is, Mr. Mayor, but perhaps if we are going to consider that motion at this point in time, there are three sets of decisions council has left to make. One is approving the budget committee minutes. Second is item 4.1, I believe, which is the corporate report on the 2019 budget from our treasurer. And
Motion then to receive the, David Sutton Treasurer Corporate Services, 2019-2021 budget approval.
we can, I suggest probably for council's benefit, because two members have declared a conflict of interest, that we take a vote on those two separate compensation portions of the budget first, so those members can excuse themselves, and then we can vote on the balance of the budget as amended. It relates to, through you, Mr. Mayor, it relates to both 4.1 as well as the budget committee minutes. So through you, Mr. Mayor, this first motion relates specifically to the compensation portion of the Enforcement and Bylaw Services budget, and that's a portion of the budget that Councillor Fortini had declared a conflict, so Councillor Fortini is leaving. And Mr. Mayor, you can take a vote on this motion at this time.
Okay. Moved by,
We're just taking a separate vote. You don't need a separate vote.
all those in favor? Motion carries.
Councillor Fortini can return. Mr. Mayor, the next separate motion relates to the compensation portion of the Public Works and Engineering Department budget, to which Councillor Willens had declared a conflict. Councillor Willens has left. Council can consider this motion.
All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank
And now the entirety of 4.1? We get that up on the screen too? This is a lengthy motion, but it is on the screen. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Medeiros. All those in favor? Recorded vote? Is it too late for a recorded vote? Okay, recorded vote.
Recorded vote's been requested on the 2019 budget. The report by the treasurer, all in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Santos, Councillor Vasante, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that motion carries unanimously 11-0.
Okay, 11-0.
All staff just went, ah.
Shall we do 4.2? Councillor Vicente? You put this on the screen too? City of Brampton Public Transit Streams Priority Projects be received. This is from earlier. That we're going to, the mayor will immediately write the province of Ontario expressing the urgent need for the province to open the intake process for the public transit stream for projects within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. The public transit projects identified within the report and aligned to the guidelines, objectives, and outcomes set out within the federal provincial integrated bilateral agreement be included in the City of Brampton's priority transit projects. That the letter be circulated to all members, Brampton members of Parliament and members of provincial Parliament. And just to verify, this wording would cover the report we're going to get next week on the LRT, right? That would be.
To you, your worship, this report, sorry, I'm getting echoed. This report covers strictly the public transit stream funding. The report that will be coming next week from Commissioner Swaniga will be dealing with the LRT and potential funding amounts and sources for that.
Okay, but I think the request to the MPs was for us to lobby the provincial government to accept the intake for Building Canada.
So the intake is a public transit stream funding. That's the one that's been announced recently for the northern properties or anything outside the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And the funding the capital funding that we have identified for the public stream funding is in our 10-year capital program that impacts significantly in the next 3 years that are outlined in the chart in terms of the projects that would be funded through that public stream.
Okay. So it's not for Building Canada?
Well, it's part of the whole green, the Building Canada Fund is separate. The Building Canada Fund is separate. The public transit stream funding has been identified through that 22 billion that's apportioned through the different ones, with public stream being one of them.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. We have 5.1, moved by myself and Councillor Vicente. The minutes of the Budget Committee meeting March 19th, 20th, and 25th, 2019 to the Special Council meeting of March 27th, 2019 be received, and the recommendations be approved as outlined in the subject minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is the motion moved by Councilor Fleschy. We'll need a seconder to take a separate vote on funding for the 2019 operating budget to be identified and allocated for the council office political model implementation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bowman. Councillor Medeiros has the floor.
Thank you, through the chair. To Peter, we talked about that we can't use hybrid models, meaning if there's councillors who feel so passionate about not going to political model, that they could not stay, I guess, in their current model where the expenses of their assistants that do work for them is reflected in corporate budget. So it's not transparent and it's not accountable to the community. Now, if they wanted to opt out and not get any assistance in the political model, would that be allowed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would. It's entirely up to the decision of the individual member of council.
Okay, so if they felt passionate not to support political model, then they could opt out not having an assistant in this model, theoretically.
That's a decision that's left to each individual member to make that decision.
And through the chair, through the mayor, when any decision that we make with our, if we decide to operate within our allocated budget, this gets posted on the internet. It'll be public so people can see exactly what they do with their dollars and if they decide to hire assistants or not.
That is correct.
Okay, and just lastly, for public's benefit, the budget allocated would essentially reflect possibility of hiring 2 positions, if so deemed, under, I believe, I'm not sure if that's under an allocated budget, 1 or 2. By if we hired 2, or if they want to go to a different model, everything is put on the internet.
That is correct, and it's not restricted to the number of positions. It's restricted through you, Mr. Mayor, to an upset limit for a salary budget for council office support staff.
Yeah.
And there's multiple combinations of staffing that each councillor is afforded the opportunity to hire for.
See, and through the city clerk, I guess my concern is around this. To do what we're implementing here is the first time the city of Brampton is doing this, and it's long overdue, especially for the size of municipality that we have. Other municipalities have already moved over to this model. But this is really one of these political decisions that you do need basically courage to do, because it's about giving that better service. My concern always is when you make these type of changes, it's very easy to vote against but still benefit from the program and utilize it. And that's why it's important for me, and it's important, I think, for the public to understand that by going to this model in terms of supporting it, it's really about providing better service. And I just want to avoid the easiest political thing to do is not support it, but still take advantage of the program. Thank you.
So was there an amendment there, or?
No amendment.
Councillor Dillon.
Just off of what Councilor Medeiros had just said, how would we go about right now to opt out? So if somebody wanted to opt out of the political model, what can we do right now to ensure that happens? So, because I know some councillors are not in favor of the new political model. What can we do? How do we move so that it can occur, that they can opt out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, council has already made its decision to move to a political model. That policy decision has been made. If council wishes to reconsider that decision, it is a reconsideration under council's procedural rules. The only decision that council is making as part of the 2019 budget is the funding allocation, where the money's coming from to pay for that decision. That decision's been made. If an individual member of council does not wish to hire staff, hypothetically, that is their individual decision.
So can we bring this up in the next committee? So I wanted to be very clear to the public that we either opt in or opt out. And so can we move so that in committee, or whether it's council, that it's clearly illustrated on the website or somewhere that a certain councillor has opted into the political model system or opted out? That's what I'm trying to get at. How would we go about having it shown on the website that a councillor has opted in or opted out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it would show through the quarterly expenses and through the annual remuneration report, such as the one that council considered earlier today at its meeting. I don't think it is a good idea to start labeling individual members of council.
It's not labeling, but I think just for transparency and I think for accountability, I think it's something that's important. I think some councillors feel very strongly about being accountable with taxpayers' money, and I think that's something that they can, if they feel that they need to, convey that to their constituents, I think they should have the opportunity to do that. And I think, if that's something that they hold highly, that they're saving taxpayer money, I think it should be clearly written who's opted in and who's opted out. So I'm just asking you, what's the best place to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the best place is through individual members communicating with their constituents, how they set up their office.
But what I'm saying is I want it to come to council, for council to decide how this can be done. And so where can this discussion take place? In committee of council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm unclear. Council's made its decision. This is implementation.
So what I'll do is this, I'll bring this up as a discussion item in committee of council for Wednesday. And I'll leave it at that for today.
Councillor Vicente. Councillor Vicente?
For clarification, Councillor Medeiros, and I see that your name is on the board again, are you suggesting that at this meeting, we allow members of council who wish to opt out from the political staffing model be able to do so by decision at this council?
Thank you, Councilor Vicente. I haven't put forth an official amendment, but I would suggest that, possibly we could look at a 30-day where a councilor would, if he would want to opt out or opt in, would make that decision public. That would be part of the requirement.
So if we were to implement a 30-day period for members of council to opt out, would that require an amendment to any part of the motions that we have before us today, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would require reconsideration of council's decision. That is not a matter that can be considered at this meeting. This is a special meeting for approval of the budget only, and that would be a notice of motion that should be brought forward at a future council meeting.
So in the same, when a member of council, through you, Mr. Chair, if a member of council decides to separate out a portion of the proposed budget, which includes funding to support the political staffing model, are they in effect opting out of that political staffing model?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they are not. They're opting not to expend the funds for which council has allocated to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Each member of council, through you, Mr. Mayor, will be allocated funds for salary funds for hiring their political staff. if it's up to an individual member, as long as they do not go over that amount, how they choose to spend that in accordance with council's rules for hiring their staff. And if they choose not to use that money, that is a councillor's individual decision.
Okay, Councillor Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So just to be clear, we put forward this political staffing model to, again, as Councillor Majeros had pointed out, to increase the service levels and be more accountable in terms of how our particular staff and council offices, the expenses being paid, salaries, etc. It's a far more accountable approach, and it is comparable to other large municipalities across the province. What I will say is, to emphasize Councillor Majero's point again, is that it's very easy to paint a broad brush saying that councillors are spending so much money on getting extra staff and then vote against this particular motion, while in the same breath, potentially in the future, hire and spend that same amount of budget later on. It's a political move. I will say that very much, and I just wanted to call that out. And I do support any amendments that Councillor Majeros wants to make in effect, or anyone on council, to make it public as to whether or not councillors here support the political model or not, and to share in the future whether or not those councillors plan and actually use their entire expense account. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, the review that we're going to be undertaking, the service review, I guess it's a similar way of saying at a different level, you know, staff have tried to find efficiencies, and staff always, and they do a really good job at you know, trying and working hard to find those efficiencies. But that review, when it comes back, and I believe Mayor Brown, maybe another member of council requested that review to happen. Sorry, I don't recall. Are they going to, what does that look like when it does come back to council?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Paleshi, what's coming back, which is scheduled for May of this year, is a final report which includes recommendations for the city's consideration that could reduce costs. Some of it would include recommendations that create some efficiencies, which it could include cost avoidance or longer-term cost savings. And other ones are going to be recommendations on changes to service levels to reduce costs. Council, of course, is the body that defines service levels for the city. So those would be decisions council would need to make. Some of them will be more complex issues that we would be expecting additional consultants to come on and do a further deep dive to help us best understand and have all the information in front of us to make the informed decision of whether or not we're going to make changes to service levels or, you know, significant restructuring or certain lines of business we should get into or merge or divest from.
Okay. And I don't recall, maybe you can remind me, in previous budget cycles, have council ever requested staff, or have staff gone above and beyond and come back to council to say, you know, we found efficiencies here in terms of the course of whatever happens, ducks align and everything, and just report back to council, kind of those good news stories to say that, you know, where efficiencies can be made, where efficiencies have been made. Has that happened in the past?
Through the chair, not particularly. You know, there has been efficiencies that have been in the budget submissions, but not to the extent that we've seen here today, and nor as I expect to see coming out of the service review.
If I may, through the chair, to add to the treasurer's comments, I believe there has been examples in the past where we have identified an operational review and identified new re-engineered processes that have identified efficiencies and savings that would be recognized through the budget process potentially or immediately.
And that's kind of what I thought, and sorry, Dave, I wasn't really referring to budget, but kind of overall in our day-to-day business and that kind of thing. So That's great. I agree with a lot of comments that have been made around the table with respect to better service to our residents. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Willens.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, seeing how we've exhausted this subject since the better part of this term, I'd like to call the question.
Okay, so those who have not spoken will have the opportunity to do so. Councillor Bowman.
Oh, I thought Councillor, Wills, okay, still on the board. Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't know what to say. I thought we were coming here and this was a great budget, great news. It was going to be a great news story, so we've kind of taken a little bit of a detour. But I just want to make one thing clear, and that is that every single person sitting here has the right to vote however they feel about any part of this budget, whether it be an expense here, whether it be a building here, whether it be something in my ward, whether it be something in somebody else's ward. This has nothing to do. The model has already been passed. It's a done deal. It's finished. You know, we're moving to it. There's no question about it. And if one person or two people feel like they just want to say, you know, I still don't support the expenditure of the budget, that's just fine. That's everybody's right to do that here. And, you know, to go around the table and say that you're this and you're this and you're this because you want to support this and take advantage of this has nothing to do with it. Everybody here is free to vote on anything the way they feel like it. And I encourage everybody to vote the way they feel like it on any of these issues. If there's something else that you want pulled out of this budget, go ahead, pull it out. It's your prerogative. So I'm just waiting for the vote. We'll see what happens. But like I said, this council model is already been voted on. It's done. It's over. It's all we're doing is voting on the funding for it. Thank you.
So we're only continuing with those who haven't spoken, and the clerk I see on the board, Councillor Singh and Councillor Fortini, they haven't spoken yet. Okay. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I have a question. So this was passed on the first day. I think we had our first committee of council meeting, correct? The first meeting, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was the first meeting in January, after a request from council in December.
Okay. And so we've had, about 4 months of discussions around this model. It's gone to governance committee, and we've worked on this extensively. My question is, I know as councilors we worked on this. How much staff time has gone into making this happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't quantify it, but I can tell you that there's a lot of staff time to implement this.
Yeah. And there's a lot of changes happening, and I think we're kind of midway into our changes, correct? Because we're expecting to...
A little more than midway?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you know, I appreciate the spirit behind this motion. I understand that, but we have to be conscious that the opportunities to go back and revisit or change were provided to us over the last few months, and I think if we didn't take advantage of those opportunities, I personally feel right now is not the best time, so I will not be supporting this motion.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm glad Mr. Councillor Singh here talked about staff time. Through the last term, we spent many times going through different, if you went one-on-one, two-on-two. Member service we had a lot of discussion on it. And it looks like we started off at the beginning, as soon as certain councillors got what they wanted, they didn't want to go to them all. This term, it happened again. Staff was moved around, and all of a sudden, now, after 2 months of discussing on this, we all agreed. Now we're back where we started. Do we need 2/3 votes to open this, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've already advised that there is no opportunity to reopen at this meeting. This meeting specifically for approval of the budget. And should council wish to reconsider it, it can be through a notice of motion at a future regular council meeting.
Okay, so this is only about the budget, so why are we talking about the whole model? And we're discussing one-on-one, two-on-two, if we're gonna opt out, we're gonna opt in. Really, this is only. So, I won't support it. We talked on this 2 months, and I don't want to spend the next 3 years like we did last term, going through this back and forth all the time.
Okay, are there anyone else who hasn't spoken? Okay, so we'll call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, recorded vote has been requested. So this is a vote for the operating budget to, as identified in the budget, to fund the political staff model that council has already approved. All in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Santos, Councillor Vicente, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that motion carries unanimously 11-0.
Okay, on that note, we can get back to budget, and I would just stress to council, we've just had a debate about a few matters that have already been completed. The staffing model, which replaces corporate staff with political staff, and we had a brief discussion about the Brampton Beast, which payments are no longer coming from the city. And so I know sometimes there can be acrimony over when motions pass or don't pass, but I don't want us to lose sense of the bigger picture here. We're about to have the first tax freeze in 20 years in this city, and so rather than get sidetracked on small acrimony, I'd ask of all of council to focus on what's pretty significant here for the city. That this is a major step forward in terms of economic development and setting the tone that we're taking a significant weight off the backs of residents, and looking forward to, if the clerk tells me, we can finally vote on the minutes. So we have a motion by myself, seconded by Councillor Vicente, the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting of March 19th, 20th, and 25th, 2019, to the special council meeting of March 27th be received, and the recommendations contained in BC 001 2019 and BC 016 2019 be approved as outlined in the subject minutes. And also, so do we vote on this first? All together. Oh, and to receive the correspondence from Camel Cara, MP, Brampton West, dated March 27th in regards to infrastructure funding. All those in favor? No question? No. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Paleshi, seconded by Councillor Bowman, the bylaw 69, 2019, before council at a special meeting of March 27, 2019, be given the required number of readings taken as read and signed by the mayor and the city clerk, and the corporate seal affixed thereto. All those in favor? Motion carries. The confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Paleshi, that the following bylaw before council at a special meeting of March 27th be given the required number of readings, taken as read and signed by the mayor and the city clerk, and the corporate seal affixed, to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on March 27th. All those in favor? Okay. And our favorite part, the adjournment. And before we go to the adjournment, I just want to thank city staff too. We've had a number of evening sessions. Councillor Fortini actually made a suggestion. We have more evening sessions to get the public more involved, and that meant that and weekends, and that meant that city staff were here a lot longer than would be normally anticipated. And I think on behalf of City Council, I just want to thank all the city staff for the great effort you put in. And I think it's really delivered a remarkable budget, a tax freeze that also brings in a transit levy, invests in infrastructure, enhances fire services. This is enhances recreation. This is a great day for the city of Brampton. And on that note, I have a motion from Councillor Medeiros, seconded by Councillor Fortini. You don't actually want to speak to that, do you, Councillor Fortini? Okay. The council do now adjourn to meet again for the regular meeting of council on Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. or at the call of the mayor. All those in favor? Motion carries. Good job, Good job. Anything you sign? Yeah. Congrats, man.
No,
That was, I just, that was good idea. I know, it takes a headline.
I know.
Okay then? But good job, seriously.
That's a great win for us. That's a big picture. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all your hard work.